Golden Auctions, and I'm excited to talk to him about Open's Hollywood props and memorabilia auction of iconic film artifacts from Indiana Jones, Star Wars, Marvel, and more. Why do people want these things, Joe? What do you think is the thing that makes them excited that they want to have something iconic like that in their house?
Well, it's a lot simpler than you think, Neil. Everybody watches movies, and the titles you mentioned, they're all what I call multi-generational titles. That means Star Wars, for example. Maybe that's the first movie your parents took you to. Maybe it's the last movie your grandparents took you to. Maybe it's the first movie you took your kids to. It just keeps on going. And it's a shared experience we all have, these stories and these mythologies. And unlike other areas where people are collecting for transactional reasons or investment, in this business, we're lucky we get to Willy Wonka it every single day. We're basically selling memories. Each one of these items holds memories that we all share. And if you get to be the person that has a Star Wars lightsaber hilt on your mantle, then everybody that passes by it has the same shared experience. They go, I know what that is. They grab it and they start going and waving it around. And we sort of a collective experience, and it brings us all together in a way.
I think it totally does, and it's something. And is this how affordable is this for people? Kind of explain how these auctions work. Yeah.
Sure, I'll demystify it a bit. People are very nervous. A lot of these things, as we call holy grail items, are things that are one of a kind, unlike, in other things that have multiples and you have an idea of what they're worth. Sometimes we're selling things that are one of a kind, have never been to market before, come straight from the set to the market. And so there are some very expensive things. I like to say, I get to preserve this stuff and then give it to people that can afford it because I can't. But there are things we make it's intentional that we make a something for everyone sale. So you may not be able to buy $1 million Indiana Jones whip, but you can buy a poster from your favorite movie that's maybe signed for a couple $100. There's something for everybody here, and the memories are just as potent in a $100 item as they are in a $2 million item. So there's value for everybody, and everybody's welcome.
So this is what I would say is owning my own agency, especially podcasts, social
Mhm.
media, branding agency. If I was able to get your email list when you talk about specifically the people who are buying those
Mhm.
big auction items, and they're all over the world, right?
It's an international sale and market, yes.
And where do you is it hard to get it out to find the people that can't afford those items?
It's a funny thing because, as I said, it's such a shared memory. Star Wars is such an international, universal, galactic hit and blockbuster that, half the time the fans and the audience does half the footwork for us. We put it out there and we do all the promotion that we do our diligence in making sure everybody who would want to know knows. But then, there's tons of foot soldiers who wish they could have it and tell the next person and tell the next person. So it's the kind of thing that everybody sort of buzzes about, making our job a little easier and making sure that these get into the hands of the people that love them. Because, as I said earlier, there's the perk of my job is, we're preservationists. These things would maybe sit in a dumpster, or, many of these things were not meant to last beyond production. So the fact that there's people like us and you and me that would love to have it and hold it and share it and take care of it is a great service to the legacy of filmmaking and to the stuff we love.
And what separates you from other auction companies when it
Well,
comes?
Ken Golden is ever ambitious. He wants to share everything with everybody. He's like the Pied Piper of the auction business. He never loses his enthusiasm and excitement. And in deciding to come along with us and bring me and the team in to start really, really focusing on Hollywood memorabilia and props, he sort of let us, do something that the other companies, the bigger companies like us, can't do, and that is we curate really nicely designed boutique sales where we can give everything attention. And we also, since we're film lovers, we take the time to do introductions and to celebrate the people that made the pieces. So we'll do an introduction where somebody else might say, "Oh, here's a Mary Pickford photo." We'll say, "Hey, Mary Pickford was one of the benefactors of the Motion Picture Television Fund, and she was a great, philanthropist. And this is a way to support, the legacy of this person." Because if you think about it, every year some star falls off the edge of the universe from the silent era as the audience fades away. So it's always great to have an opportunity to stoke interest and introduce these old figures, because there's a thread that goes through everything, right? If we love King Kong, there's a thread that goes from that to Steven Spielberg and Jurassic Park. So we like to connect the dots as well. So it's kind of a fun job, and we're sort of part historian, part salespeople.
And the sales, what is your day-to-day operations to go find those people to get ready to be at the auction when you do
Well,
that?
we do outreach. We make sure that people know. A lot of people, need space. A lot of people, will approach them and they'll say, "I don't need the money," and and I always say, "Well, think about it. Do you want to be, do you want to be buried with the stuff, or do you want to pass it on to people who are going to take care of it for the rest of their lives and then pass it on to the next person?" Because really, when you think about stuff, we're really only visiting it, right? We can think we own it, but at some point, we're
It's
gone.
good. You're giving it
Gonna
to
move
somebody
on.
else, hopefully, and it doesn't
That's
end up in
right.
the garbage, which
Right. We might as
happens.
well. Not everybody's family appreciates this stuff either. I have collectors who tell me, "Yeah, I've amassed this collection, but my kids, for some reason, they just don't care about it. So I'd rather, pass it on to somebody that's going to love it like I do." So,
And the set stuff is just like the gold, but you have other collectible items that
mhm,
have value. We all know Star Wars figures from
sure.
years and back in the
Mhm,
80s are still worth a lot of money. So you
mhm.
have a whole collection. Do you do more online or do you have other big in-person auctions as well?
Well, we do have, auctions that go live and that are happening, that are curated, you know, golden auctions. And then there's also, with our relationship with eBay, there's an opportunity to have daily sales. So we run the gamut from, really concentrated big ticket items and one of a kind collectibles down to some commercial collectibles, just like you'd find in sports, sports cards and things like that. We might have Star Wars cards, or we might have some magazines from back in the day. That stuff all becomes valuable as time passes and there's less and less of it. Some of it, when they print a run of particularly in the 70s, before people slap the word collector's item and everything, you figure even if they made 100,000 copies of something, how many kids like me read them to death until they were confetti, and how many end up lasting until now? So things do become rarer with time, and the condition of them becomes important too. So
So thinking about the onset stuff,
mhm,
the real iconic stuff that literally Indiana Jones,
mhm,
Harrison Ford touched,
mhm,
or or some major star touched. How do you gather this stuff at this point in time,
mhm.
being able to get those things from the sets?
Well, as we get older, people go in their closets and say, "Wow, I worked on this 40 years ago, 50 years ago, 30 years. What am I doing? It's sitting here. I should pass it on. Maybe I'll take the family to the Bahamas." And people just start thinking about divesting of stuff that's been sitting and gathering dust. And if they run into us, we'll let them know, what the value of this stuff is, and that, that they can A, pass it on to someone that'll take care of it, and B, make some money to enjoy while they're with us. And so it becomes pretty easy. Word of mouth becomes a big factor. Our outreach. Some people don't even know what they have. I've talked to some actors who are like, "Well, I'm going to throw away my script," and I'm like, "Wait a minute, why would you throw that away?" "Well, it's paper and it's." "Well, wait a minute." That is the closest thing someone like me is going to get to a time machine to travel back to the set of this movie I love. "Oh, but it's got lipstick stains on it." "Great. But it's got a coffee ring on it." "Great." It shows signs of being there. And these one person's junk is another person's treasure could never be more true than in our business.
And when people do it, it's because they want to bring back those memories. So
Yes.
finding the people that are going to do the $1 million ones,
Mhm.
do you have a list or do you just go out and outreach or you have a great sales team to find them?
We have an amazing sales team. We're plugged into social media, and it's so much fun because really, maybe it's a sales job. It doesn't feel like it. It really feels like we get to shout from the top of the mountain about this cool stuff that we have and that we get to handle. And we wish we could keep it. We can't, but maybe you can. It would be nice for us to know you have it because you can afford it. You'll enjoy it. You'll share it. So it becomes really fun to do outreach and to try to find the people. And remember, it's not only individuals, institutions, museums, all kinds of places shop with us, because there's lots of organizations that do a serious job of preservation and collecting. our movie, heritage. So there's many different sources of money. There's some collective groups who will get together as an investment to get something, or sometimes there can be a fan group that wants to have this Holy Grail item on display as they share their love of a particular title or particular character. And it just goes on and on and on.
Wow. What is the best place people can go check everything out?
Well, go to golden.com and you can see all of our catalogs. There's sports, pop culture in general, our Hollywood auction, which is just crammed with things, everything you can imagine from Star Wars, Harry Potter, and, mostly screen used material, things that, you can get a replica Harry Potter wand that's pretty, but if you have
Wow.
one that you know is from the movie and handled by the character, you've got a pretty special item there that is, one of a kind that you can celebrate and that people will ooh and ah as they walk past it in
Do you
your.
have some live auctions coming up where people can be there with the auction? Do you do some of those events?
We're working on that right now. What we do is we have the auction going for a certain amount of time. In the case of the Hollywood auction, about a month, and then toward the end, in the last days, we do a color commentary, which is sort of like a live calling of the auction, where
Oh,
where I and other Hollywood experts will sit and we'll talk about the nuances of things. Because if you think about it, our catalog goes from the beginning of time in movie making to just yesterday. So we'll sit there and we'll say, well, here's some black and white bromide or gelatin silver photographs of this silent movie star. And, there's no silvering and the corners are really sharp. And we'll try to give some context to the people that love this stuff who are much better experts than us in their particular field. Try to give as much nuance and as much detail as we can so that they can bid with confidence and they know what they're getting when they bid for it.
Joe, I have a co-host that sometimes comes on board, but I'm asking this specific
Mhm.
question. Joe, and it comes from Greg Hanna from Toss C3, and we do a lot of co-hosting together. So,
Mhm.
Joe, what is the most important thing in life you've ever learned?
The most important thing in life I've ever learned is stuff and people are people. And we really collect people. We don't collect things. And in sharing and getting and having an interest in history and the legacy of something that we all share, that's as exciting as movies are to all of us, you collect some amazing people and you find out that politics, religion, and all the things that separate us kind of melt away when you find common ground with something that you love with a passion together. So that's probably the
Well,
most important thing I've learned.
love it. And go to golden.com right now. Appreciate it. Thanks again, Joe, and appreciate you coming on by.
It's great having come back again.